Hey guys, welcome back to the Worship Team Training Hangout. How are you guys? Hope that you're doing well. We are broadcasting live and we are so happy to be with you to talk about leadership today. That is our topic. We're going to be having our great friend and guest, Scott Couchenour, to bring us through what it means to have or not have TNT Leadership. Thanks for joining us on our YouTube channel and also watching us by Facebook and, of course, worshipteamtraining.com. I'm Brandon Dempsey, and it's great to have you today. Be sure to check out all that we have to offer at worshipteamtraining.com. We have our mentoring programs, which is a side-by-side study that you can have with one of our mentors like Tony Guerrero, myself, Laura Marriott, Rich Kirkpatrick, many others that can walk alongside your journey, and that's what we do, as well as our weekend workshops, 1- and 2-day events that come to you. You can find all that stuff back at worshipteamtraining.com. Also be sure to sign up for the newsletter and check out the workshops page. All right, well, so without further ado, it is fantastic to have this new season 6, which we call Unceasing Worship, because in this time together, we're going to be talking about the things that both promote our worship and we are fruitful with our worship, and also avoiding things that would cause hindrance. Leadership is one of those such things. And then by a guy that has started his own serving strong ministry, which helps redevelop and help rehabilitate pastors to overcome burnout. He's helped church leaders to conquer burnout for years now, and his passion is to maximize ministry leadership because of the stakes that are eternal and life is short. So his hope is that worship leaders and pastors across the globe not only survive burnout, but they can conquer it completely. So without further ado, let's welcome our guest, Scott Couchenour. Scott, how?
I'm good. It's always good to be with you guys.
Great to have you. And Tony, how are you? Great to have you as well today.
I'm doing well. I'm glad I could be here. I thought for a minute I was going to have to give you the fateful call, but I'm glad I was able to do it. So,
well, glad to have you as always, my friend. So good. So we're here to talk about TNT leadership, and as we get into before we get into that question, Scott, you and I talked about the title of that. Can you give us a little bit of backstory as to how we arrived at this juncture?
Yeah, we talk about explosive emotions. We talk about we were thinking of dynamic leadership, worship leadership, slipping into dynamite leadership, and it's all about controlling emotions.
Controlling emotions, right. So when we talk about controlling emotions, I mean, leadership can be detrimental in terms of if it's used in a negative way, it can be explosive, but it can also be implosive for the people that you lead. And so can we talk about the emotional side and what you call emotional intelligence, and tell us, what does that mean?
Okay. Emotional intelligence actually comes from the work that Daniel Goleman has put together, a lot of resources and a lot of blog posts that write about what Daniel Goleman had put together. But I think the main thing about emotional intelligence is recognizing that God has created us as emotional beings. And it's not so much, even though we say control your emotions, it's more a matter of controlling your reaction to your emotions, because it's impossible to control your anger, because anger is. Now, it's a part of us. We get angry at various times and for various reasons. And so to say that emotional intelligence is controlling that anger means it's the same as saying, don't be the way God has created you. That being said, there's a lot of harm that comes from anger. Or flip that upside down, and that is euphoria. Like, praise God, everything's going to work out. There's no need to do anything. It's just going to work out. What we do when we are emotionally intelligent is we recognize when we are angry, We recognize the reaction, and it's in that split second between what we take in and how we react. That split second, what we do between those two things that take place. If you said something to me that was offensive to me, I have a choice. Right after I receive that, my brain takes in that information, and a lot of stuff is happening very quickly. Emotional intelligence is being able to control the reaction to the anger that we feel. So, an emotionally intelligent response to something that makes you angry can be as simple as saying to that person, Brandon, what you just said makes me angry. And I don't know why, it just does. That's emotionally intelligent, as opposed to, Brandon, you're an idiot. I've worked hard on this project.
Which Tony, by the way, has no problem with those words. So, but while we're on that topic, though, that's good, Scott. Tony, can you talk about how important is communication in terms of how we communicate, as to what Scott just gave that example?
Well, I mean, we've talked about. I love to talk about Matthew 18 in terms of leadership, because I think the root of so many problems in ministry in general, but I see this on worship teams all the time, where, if I do a Q&A, almost without question, the first question is going to be, I've got this guy on my team who does this, who's always this, or who, acts like this. And the amount of times that, like, my first response is always the same. And that's to say, let me ask you this, have you dealt with that head on? Have you gone to him face to face and said this? And the amount of times that the answer is no, I haven't done that yet, is really telling to me. It's telling that most of us avoid conflict at any cost. And yet biblically, that if we follow that model of Matthew 18, so many of the problems we have from a leadership down, and even from down up to the leadership, like, so many of those problems would dissipate to simply go to somebody face to face in love, which is back to the question of how you communicate. There are bad ways to communicate. I'm going to say something offensive to probably most people listening, and that is
surprising.
There's no getting around it. The amount of years that I've been in ministry and worked with dozens, if not hundreds, of different leaders in different situations, I have no problem saying that most leaders in the church are bad leaders. That doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they are bad-hearted, bad-intentioned, or anything like that. But the plain fact is, all the musical training in the world, all the seminary training in the world, all the training you get does not make you a good leader, except maybe if you're actually getting leadership training. But very few people actually get leadership training. And they're just, I've seen people at all levels of leadership, from, high up in mega churches all the way down to small little situations, where people just don't lead well. And I think that's not an indictment that, like, nobody should really be offended at that. What we should do is use that as an opportunity to just tell yourself, I'm a bad leader. What do I need to do to improve that? Like, if you just are willing to ask yourself that question, like, to just admit that, you may not be the worst leader. You may not actually be very bad. But if you were to just start off today just saying, where can I improve my leadership? I guarantee you will find at least one, if not multiple, areas that you can improve your leadership skills. Yeah. And if that's true, then you are not the leader yet that God has called you to be. Like, there's that bar is always set way up here, and we toil down here, And so to constantly ask yourself that question, how can I improve my leadership skills today? And that goes back to, communication is a key thing. And I have a whole list of stuff I could read to you here of things that I think are key leadership issues that you need to be addressing. I know in the arts, there are so many creative people who are in charge of big teams and are horrible, horrible administrators. And their lack of administration skills kills people underneath them. And it drains the energy. It burns people out. And it's bad leadership to just think that's okay. My leadership skills are, my lack of administration skills, you'll just have to deal with them. No, you've got to deal with them. As the leader, you have to deal with them. So to just ask yourself that question, where can I improve my leadership skills? If you honestly can look at yourself and say everything's 100% where it needs to be, then good on you. But I guarantee that's not the case.
Right. Tony, thanks for that, man. And and that's the reason why we do leadership training here at Worship Team Training, and we have our mentoring program, because things like communication, things like understanding where people are at and their mindset makes a huge difference. And absolutely right. I mean, Scott, can you speak on that a bit? I really resonate with what Tony said. We can have all the training in the world, book smart wise, but what makes us ministry smart, intelligent smart?
Yeah, Tony's right on. The difference between arrogance and confidence. An arrogant person walks into a room and says, "There is nothing I can learn from anybody in this room." A confident individual is someone who walks in that same room and says, "I think I can help everybody in this room with what God has given me." Now, confidence, that's not lording it over someone else. And the problem, I think, with leadership is we are placed, it's unfortunate that years ago, the organizational chart started at the top and went down.
Right.
I'm working with an organization right now where the organization is literally, the chart is upside down, where the clients are in the middle and they're the central focus. But then as you go from worker to foreman to manager to staff to ownership, everybody's moving their way down. So if you look at yourself as a leader in the truest sense of servanthood, servant leadership, that I'm kind of getting off on what I really want to say, and that is getting back to what Tony said. I think the mindset of an emotionally intelligent worship leader starts with the attitude of I am teachable. I can learn something from everyone every day, all day long.
Wow.
Can I step in on? I
go for it.
I love the comparison of those two words, arrogance and confidence, because I would encourage you, based on everything I was just saying, it's not a negative thing to look at yourself and say, I'm a bad leader. Mm-hmm. You should be confident in your shortcomings. And by that, I mean, as a musician, I'm a musician. I do sessions and I work with a lot of different musicians. I make my living mostly as a trumpet player. I'm a really good trumpet player. I'm not this guy. I'm not a lead trumpet player. I don't play all the high notes. And I'm very confident in what my abilities are and in what my lack of abilities are. So if you call me for a gig or a session and I don't know what the gig is yet, the first thing out of my mouth is, tell me about what you're expecting of me. Because if you're expecting a lead trumpet player, that's not me. And to walk into those situations confident of your shortcomings, and that seems counter to be confident of something negative, but it's really one of the strongest leadership things you can do is be very confident of where your shortcomings are and embrace them, because those are the areas that once you embrace those, you're able to notice more and more when opportunities are to learn to improve in those areas. You start to recognize them more. If I know I'm not good at something, I'm going to notice when that guy is, and I can learn from him. And so to embrace those and be confident, it's a great word to juxtapose there. So
yeah. No, that's good. Tony, that's great. How about we talk about those that are not as equipped to deal with leadership, and what Scott says, maybe I use this term very, very lightly, but let's just say emotionally ignorant or perhaps at times stupid. How do you deal with the stupidity, let's say, of those that you're trying to interact with? And I'm not calling people stupid. I'm just calling that we all do stupid things. I do stupid things too. But how do you deal with that kind of roadblock in communication and with personality, Scott?
It's a matter of the leader creating a culture, the right culture, to where when someone is being emotionally ignorant, it is self-regulated by the other members. It can't be the leader's gig. It needs to be the team's gig. And this takes time. I mean, this is not something that you just flip a switch and say, okay, everybody's going to be emotionally intelligent in this room, on this team. But over time, and there's a lot of points underneath that creating a culture, but here are a couple of things. Number one, be what you want to see more of, and celebrate what you want to see more of. When someone is emotionally intelligent, pick up on that. Put it on a pedestal. Say, that is what we're looking for in this culture. Good for you. I'm so proud of you. Guys, this is what we need to see on this team. When you celebrate that, you get people thinking, this is what we need to do.
That is awesome. Wow. Tony, what's that like for you when, you're working with musicians, like you said, day to day in studio?
You're working with stupid people all the time. So.
That's not what I meant. What is that like for you as you're having to motivate your teams to come in, different musicians, different levels, different personalities? How do you walk through that?
Well, I will say, I like what Scott was saying about the idea of being able to learn from the truth is we can learn from stupid people also, both we can learn from them if we can see past the stupidity to the things that everybody's got gifts. If we can look to their gifts and beyond the stupidity, we can learn from them. If we can look to their stupidity and think, that's how I would look if I were doing that, or I do that sometimes. That's another way we can learn. And the truth is, if God can speak to people through an ass, then he can speak to us through stupid people too. So, that being said, I think very often the motivation comes in two ways for me. Going back to my example of bad leadership, I think very often leaders tell people how to act. You need to be this way. You need to be this way. You need to show up on time. You need to, whatever it is. I don't think people respond to that, at least not long term. They may show up on time next week and maybe for a couple of weeks, but I don't think people really respond to that. I think the two ways we can motivate and educate our teams is one, by example, and this comes back to leadership. Like, all the things that you are going to expect of your team, you better be the best at on your team. If you've got an issue with people showing up late, you better be the first one in the room every single time and set that bar. You as the leader are the one who sets that bar. And when I say you as a leader, that doesn't just mean those of you who are appointed as leaders, because those of you right now who are not in leadership, that's how you become a leader, is start setting that bar very high. Become a leader in your lower, not yet a leader position. So we lead by example, and that's a great motivator. If your team isn't improving musically, then ask yourself that question I always ask on the show. It's like, am I a better musician now than when I took this job?
Right.
Are you showing that you're improving your skills? Are you taking lessons? Are you telling your team, man, look what I learned from my teacher this week? Are you showing them, setting that bar, that example of musically improving your skill? So that's number one, is by example. Number two for me, and this is really the most important one, is we motivate them not with what our desire is, but with what God's desire is and what God expects. If they're on your team, there's a very good chance that they are believers who want to honor the Lord, right? If that's the case, then they need to know what the Lord wants of them. They need to know what the Lord has planned for them, what the Lord can do for them, if they honor him, and just so to educate people on your teams with what God's expectation is. When I talk about quality in the church, in terms of quality music, my approach isn't because I like to listen to quality music, I want you guys to be quality. My approach is that God demands quality from us. God blesses quality. God expects quality. When you motivate that way, that's different than me just saying, you guys get better,
Mm-hmm.
But to have people know that this is what God wants for me, this is what God expects of me, this is what God has given me. That's a whole different way of motivating than just telling your team what to do.
Right.
Right.
Awesome. Very good. Scott, as we talk about, the emotional side, and that can go either way, can you give us some examples of maybe what leaders that are weaker in, and like what Tony's saying, they need to step up and this is how they become a leader? Can you give us some suggestions of some other things that they can do?
To improve their emotional intelligence?
Yes.
Now listen up, Brandon.
I knew that was coming somewhere. I just had this feeling.
That's right. Well, I think it all starts with the mind. I think what we said already in having an attitude of being able to be teachable is first and foremost. Another is if you look forward, look to the side, and look behind you in terms of mentorship. Mentorship is historically just thought of as who's already at where I want to be, and what can I learn from them? What did they learn? What not to do? What to do? And that's fine. That's looking forward at the people who are older than you and experienced. But there are two other mentors that you need to build into your support network, and that is to the side, and those are your peers. We have blinders, just like horses in a race. We've got blinders on, and we can't see things, and we don't know what we don't know. So if you cultivate a relationship with some peers to say, I give you permission to tell me when I'm being emotionally inept or ignorant or stupid. Just call me out, because the sooner I know that, the more time I have to deal with it. And then look backwards. And this is one that's very infrequently used, and that is who younger than me, who is just now getting into worship, or they're brand new on our team. What can I learn from that person? In discussing millennials and boomers and all that, we talk about reverse mentoring, is looking back to someone who is younger than you. And I don't know about you guys are very young, so I know what it's like to never have the internet and cell phones and all that. So I have that experience, and so I'm not as inclined to take on something new technologically as much as someone who that's all they know. So I can learn from those people. So it starts with an attitude of being teachable. It's looking forward to mentors, looking beside you to mentors, and looking behind you to mentors, among many other things. But it starts with an attitude that I can learn something from everyone every day.
I like that in First Chronicles, it talks about how the musicians, and how it says young and old alike, teacher as well as student, cast lots for their duties. And I love that phrase implies two things. One, that within the musicians there was mentoring going on, because it says teacher as well as student. So they were all together doing this, teachers and students. But it also specifies young and old alike, which doesn't necessarily mean just because you're older, you're the teacher. That can be reversed. The fact that those are both there sort of or act as don't force a qualification on either one. You teacher and student doesn't necessarily mean old to young.
Right. And if you build into that culture a results-oriented culture, or in business it's called a results-only work environment, or ROW, and And instead of being nitpicky about very specific things, and again, in business, it's clocking in and clocking out and doing your time, but transform it to what is each person's results expected on the team, and focus on the results. Focus on the end game. What is it that you want your team members in your leadership to say when someone says, "What do you do?" Instead of saying, "My job is," you want them to move into saying, "My responsibility on the team is, this is what I bring to the team." And there's pride in that, and it's not a bad sort of pride. It's, I belong, and this is what I do.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So, Scott, kind of give us a wrap up now. I mean, you said just a great amount of things and tools that we can resort to help us in these times of needs. But what's the one thing out of everything we discussed today that you keep coming back to?
I think and I get this from Justin Bariso. He's the founder of an organization called Insights, and there's some tremendous emotional intelligence blog posts. Be happy to share those with you. I like 3 questions. This is something you could take with you right now. As soon as you get off this video, you can say, with regard to emotional intelligence, number 1, does this need to be said? Number 2, does this need to be said by me? And number 3, does this need to be said by me right now? So if you ever hit a situation where emotions are high, or you're not sure if it's because this person is just, they rub you the wrong way, and unfortunately they're on your team, you want to say to yourself, does this need to be said? Does this need to be said by me? And does this need to be said by me right now?
Very good.
I love that.
Scott, thank you so much for your time today, man. It was great having you, and appreciate all that you brought to the table today in the discussion. Thank you.
It's an honor.
And
it's nice to be with you, Tony.
And Tony, as always, glad that you're here to join us as well, giving your input and insight.
Thank you. I just want to add that I love those 3 questions. I'm going to use those. And I also love that I'm going to totally steal this from you, but that rather than saying, what is my job here, to turn it into, what are others expecting of me? Like, what are others depending on me for?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow, that's a way different motivating way to look at your job.
Right.
What are others depending on me for?
Mm-hmm.
So what do I need to say anything? What needs to be said? And do I need to say it now? Love it. So Scott, thanks again for sharing that. And for everybody, please check out servingstrong.com, and you'll find Scott Couchenour to learn more about what he does, and grateful to have him on the program today. Scott, thanks again.
Keep at it.
Awesome. And guys, hey, coming up this coming month later on, we got Alva Copeland. Tony, Alva's coming back. I'm glad I didn't scare her off.
Don't miss her.
We were intelligent doing something. So I'm glad that you brought her on the program the first time. So yeah, guys, don't forget, that's coming up September 28th. And then also October 12th, we're going to have Plum. Plum is going to be on. So that's going to be awesome.
Eve Plum? Jan Brady?
Yes. The one, no, a different one that plays guitar. Jan didn't play guitar very well. And anyway, Plum's going to be on, and that's going to be October 12th. We got some more upcoming shows happening on the Hangout right here. So be sure to go back to warriorsteentraining.com/podcast. You can also just go back to warriorsteentraining.com to find everything else about our workshops, our mentoring, webinars, hangouts, and more. We love you guys. Thanks so much for coming out today, and we'll see you back next month. Next Hangout episode, September 28th with Alva Copeland. Love you guys. Take care.
See ya.
See you soon.
All right, Brown. Bye.